Here's the last question.
Okay.
We did favorite wrestler ever, non-WWE,
Yeah.
but who's your favorite of all time in the WWE?
In the WWE, man, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Bret the Hitman Hart.
Who loves Bret Hart more than Bret Hart?
I tell you what, 1997, the summer of '97, he just iced it for me as the top guy for me. Like that's and this is a thing that always changes for me. Like it's ever fluid throughout and that stuff. Like if you had asked me, maybe last year at this time, I would have said, oh, easily Randy Savage, and it's a thing that kind of changes once in a while for me, just because I have so many favorites from that era. But I always harken back to 1997 and watching the Hart Foundation rock the red and white, against that stinking Patriot and the red, white, and blue of the U.S. and that stuff, right?
But they were heels. Why are you cheering heels?
They weren't in Canada. They weren't in Bizarro Land. They were faces. They were Team Canada. It was like watching Gretzky and Lindros and Lemieux suit up against, Ryan
Basketball
Suter.
players.
Yeah, okay, sure. Against Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and,
other basketball names, yes.
Dennis Rodman.
Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, and yeah.
I mean, argument could be made that the way Bret left WWE was such a detriment to the business that it was unreal. Yeah, and I mean, still to this day, you could make that argument and everything, and it could be made the other way too, that it was one of the greatest things out of that, because we got a boon with the WWE and a ton of new eyes watching the product off of it as well. So
it actually helped.
Yeah, it is. It's quite the butterfly effect once you look at how everything's intertwined and that stuff. And I do love the podcasts that talk about it, and everything is, it's like listening to like the old conspiracy podcasts on like, who shot JFK and blah blah blah. It's
what would happen if Hart stayed? Would WWE still be here, or would be watching WCW Starrcade Mania?
Or would either company even be here? That's the thing too, because don't forget, in 2001 you had the balloon burst on a wrestling thing. So
WCW was doomed because Turner was going to close it anyway.
That's right. But with all the major contracts and that stuff, who's thinking that WWE would have stuck around at that point too?
They could have been.
Because don't forget, Bret had that 20-year deal, and he was making, I think, somewhere upwards about 2.5, 2.7 a year off of that 20-year deal.
And WWE was losing money at the time.
And then, as the deal went on, it would be decreased payments and that stuff. Here's the thing. Had he signed that deal in 1997, that deal would have just ran out last year.
And he can barely walk. That would be terrible.
Or sorry, he did sign the deal, I should say. Is that, had he signed that deal and WWE kept him on the roster, I should say, it would have just ran out last year, hypothetically, if they just, like that.
But would they steal billion business? That's the question.
That's the thing.
I mean, would we be watching TNA's WrestleManias?
Would we, or would we be watching something completely different? Would Roller Jam be the thing that would have took over everybody's,
or Slam Ball,
or Slam Ball, or Rockin' Bull, or something?
Yes.
Good Lord, but Bizarro World is weird.
We could spend hours talking about Bizarro World, and maybe we will someday. But yes, I'm going to go with my favorite wrestler is going to be the counter to your favorite wrestler, and that's the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Ah, the adversaries, forever rivals. Yes,
forever rivals, forever etched in stone.
Was there ever a hotter rivalry? I mean, there'll be fans from the 80s that say, "Oh, Hogan and Andre at its peak was hot," or Hogan and
Nick
Savage,
and
or even
Nick Bockwinkel and Vern Gagne.
Okay, that's going way back with. That's the listenership with Depends, but anyway, but that's the thing, is that for our generation, for our age group, for what we are, because we're pretty similar in age ourselves. That's what we grew up watching was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, the build to WrestleMania 12, and then the aftermath and watching Shawn kind of podunk for the summer of '96.
Not Shawn's best period yet.
No. You go back and watch those matches now and that stuff. I don't think any of them stand up.
No.
At all.
But Shawn redeemed himself.
Oh, and absolutely.
After he dealt with his demons, he came back and had match of the year for them, and then match of the year again the following year, and match of the year following year. He became the showstopper finally.
If it would have ended at WrestleMania 14 for Michaels completely, and he didn't make the comeback, I still would have said that it was. It wouldn't be good, but I still was. You'd be to make a sports analogy. It'd be like losing a Bobby Orr. And how Bobby Orr retired and that stuff. And, the young kids who are watching this and don't know who Bobby Orr is, just Google it. It's a very tragic story on how his career ended. It would be the similar thing with Shawn, with the lower back issues and that stuff. Shawn is such a polarizing figure going forward. And then when he came back in 2002, he just became the sympathetic figure for the rest of his run, because you could not cheer against the Hart. Well, we did up here.
Unless you're in Canada.
Yeah, unless you're in Canada and that stuff. And I mean, we did it during Backlash 2004, but spoiler was on us. The guy that we ultimately were cheering and applauding as a hero ended up being the worst not even tragedy, the worst thing to happen to pro wrestling. And I remember being in the crowd that night and just cheering against Shawn Michaels, every time. It's just, you screwed Bret and blah, blah, blah. And little did we know that less than 5 years from there, our guy that we were cheering in the ring that night would be a guy that's behind, the guy who killed Bruiser Brody might be the most hated dude in wrestling ever. So...
Yeah, no, I was also there at that night, and I also was cheering for Benoit at the time. It's hard to talk about. I even watched the tape recently. It's hard to watch because there's a whole tribute section to him from the city.
That's
the mayor giving him the key to the city. He's going to all these schools. He's getting all this respect from Edmonton, and
that's chilling.
3 years later, a horrible tragedy happens. It's just hard to watch. So it's one of the pay-per-views that you can't really go back to, even though it was a great card. With Shawn, I mean, that was a great match. Like, Shawn put in a lot of effort. Triple H was in the match too, but Shawn took most of the bumps.